Imagine Ahmedabad in 1907. This isn't the sprawling industrial metropolis we know today. It is a city of dusty lanes, horse-drawn carriages, and a sun that feels like a physical weight on your shoulders. The heat in Gujarat isn't just weather, it's an adversary. In the midst of this sweltering reality, a man named Vadilal Gandhi stands in a tiny shop, covered in a fine mist of sweat and salt. He isn't looking for a miracle, he's trying to invent one. At this time, ice cream was a foreign concept, a luxury of the British Raj, often made with ingredients that local religious communities viewed with deep suspicion. Many believed that to create something that cold and creamy, you had to use eggs or, worse, animal rennet. Vadilal Gandhi's genius was not just mechanical, it was psychological. He understood the purity economy. He spent his days hand-cranking a kothi, a primitive wooden bucket nested inside another, filled with coarse salt and ice. There were no motors, no cooling fans, just the rhythmic, bone-tiring sound of wood grinding against ice. He realized that if he could guarantee a vegetarian promise, he wouldn't just be selling a snack, he'd be selling a revolution. He sourced the thickest milk from local buffaloes, handpicked the saffron, and mashed the mangoes himself. When people tasted his purity, the heat of Ahmedabad didn't just feel tolerable, it felt like an opportunity. By the time the 1950s rolled around, India was a new nation, and Vadilal was a new kind of company. Vadilal's sons, the second generation, understood that manual labor couldn't scale a dream. They began looking towards the West, observing the giant cooling plants in America and Europe. They asked themselves, how do we bring the Arctic to the tropics? This was the era of the licensed Raj, and getting machinery into India was a nightmare of red tape and bureaucracy. But the Gandhi family persisted. They transitioned from the wooden kothi to the first imported electric churners. They were no longer just shopkeepers. They were becoming engineers of the cold. They understood a fundamental truth of the ice cream business that still holds true today. You aren't in the business of making food, you're in the business of managing time. In a country where temperatures reach 45 degrees Celsius, you have exactly 60 seconds from the freezer to the mouth before your product disappears. They began building the cold chain, a relay race of ice-packed boxes, insulated trucks, and tiny neighborhood depots. They were colonizing the Indian palate, one street corner at a time. The golden age of the Cassata. To understand the 1970s and 80s in India, you don't look at the politics, you look at the wedding menus. This was the era of the Cassata. To a modern teenager, a Cassata might just be a slice of ice cream with some cake and nuts. But in 1975, it was a marvel of food engineering. It had layers, it had textures, and it boasted colors that felt futuristic. Vadilal became the gold standard for the Indian middle class. If you were a father marrying off your daughter and you didn't serve Vadilal, there was a whisper among the guests. It signified you had cut corners. They introduced the 1+1 scheme, a marketing game changer. In a price-sensitive market like India, offering a second pack for free not only boosted sales but also devastated the competition's margins, forcing others in the dairy industry to play a game they weren't prepared for. However, as the cooling technology improved, family relations began to cool. By the early 90s, the third generation had arrived. In business history, this is often referred to as the third generation curse. The first generation builds, the second expands, and the third? Well, the third starts to argue over the spoils. The family split into two main factions, Vadilal Industries and Vadilal Enterprises. Imagine the chaos. You had two companies run by the same family, using the same logo, selling the same flavors, but fighting over territory like warring kingdoms. One brother had the rights to Gujarat, the other had the rest of India. They weren't fighting competition anymore, they were fighting each other. When a brand is at war with itself, it stops innovating. While the Gandhis were in the NCLT, National Company Law Tribunal, arguing over trademarks, the world around them was changing. The events of 1991 led to liberalization, and international giants like Walls, Unilever, entered India with massive budgets. Amul, the cooperative giant, recognized they could leverage their vast milk surplus to dominate the market with lower prices. Vadilal found itself paralyzed by its own family disputes. How did we arrive at this point? By 2024, the family recognized that if they didn't change their ways, there would be nothing left to fight over. The brand was becoming a legacy brand, something appreciated by parents but disregarded by their children. The pivot was radical. They did what many Indian family businesses find difficult. They professionalized. They brought in experienced leaders, CEOs who had successfully run major companies like Hindustan Unilever and Nikon. These leaders analyzed the data and uncovered a shocking reality. The real growth opportunity wasn't in competing for the 10 rupee ice cream cone in a crowded Indian market. It lay in the global desi. Now in 2026, Vadilal has transformed. They are no longer just an ice cream company. They have become a frozen food powerhouse. They recognize that a tech worker in San Francisco or a doctor in London misses more than just Indian ice cream. They miss the taste of home. Vadilal began freezing a variety of products. Alfonso mango pulp that evokes the feeling of a Mumbai summer, hand-rolled parathas, and authentic samosas. By earning dollars and pounds abroad, they built a financial reserve that allowed them to withstand price wars back in India. They turned their Indian identity from a local limitation into a global premium. As we reflect on 119 years of Vadilal, what is the key takeaway for new entrepreneurs starting businesses in their garages today? The ego tax. Every hour spent in a boardroom arguing over who is in charge is an hour your competitor is using for research and development. The Vadilal family lost nearly 30 years of potential global dominance due to internal conflicts. The purity moat. In 1907, it was vegetarian ice cream. In 2026, it might be clean label or ethical sourcing. The central lesson remains the same. Identify your customers' cultural anxieties and address them. Geography. If Vadilal had remained local to Ahmedabad, they would be a mere footnote in history. By going global, they positioned themselves as too big to fail. Vadilal Gandhi's wooden bucket is long gone, but the shop in Ahmedabad is now part of a multi-billion-dollar success story. Every time you see that logo, remember the man from 1907. He didn't have spreadsheets or a venture capital firm. He simply had a bucket, some salt, and an unwavering determination to overcome challenges. Vadilal has survived British rule, family disputes, and internal struggles. If you like my content, hit the like button and share with your friends and family.